Okay everyone, welcome to my videos. Today we're going to be talking about rifle bedding. Now to answer your first question, why would someone bed a rifle? Well, on production scale, most rifle stocks are made by automated machinery and made so one stock will fit any action. This is good for production, but not so good for accuracy. As you can see in this picture, you get a stock that has high spots that press and bend the barrel, and low spots where there's nothing for the action to bear against. Bedding is a process of filling and leveling these problem spots to give a perfect glove-like fit and to dramatically increase accuracy. So let's get started. The first step is to open up the stock. Basically you need to make room for the bedding compound. They make special chisels and scrapers for accomplishing this job, but I personally have found that a Dremel tool comes in quite handy. I also have several of the scrapers that open up the barrel channel. Next, you need to cover and remove everything you don't want to be chipping epoxy out of, like the checkering here. The easiest thing to do is to simply cover them with masking tape. Next comes preparing the action. Now you just want to improve the fit of the action to the barrel. The action of the stock. We don't want to fill all the spaces for things like the trigger or the magazine. So we take modeling clay and fill in the parts we don't want full of epoxy. Magazine well, trigger well, any pinholes, all engravings. Trust me, the clay comes out a lot easier than set epoxy. I do the same for parts of the stock that we don't need full. And now this customer wanted the barrel floated out, which is a way of improving accuracy that I won't go into a whole lot of detail because it's a very long story and kind of complicated to explain, but basically when you fire the gun, the barrel actually moves, which you want to let happen. I can't really go into a whole lot of detail in this video. If anyone's interested, email me. I can explain the whole thing or maybe do another video explaining it. But basically, if nothing's touching the barrel forward of the chamber, in most cases the rifle will be more accurate. And that's what this customer wanted. And to accomplish that, the barrel is built up from the chamber forward using bedding tape. In my case, I use electrical tape. It's the same thing, just a little thinner, so I have to put on several layers. You also want to apply some tape to the bottom and front and sides of the recoil lug, but not the back. This will help you getting the action back out of the stock a little bit after everything's done and cleaned up. But you don't want to put any tape on the back because that's where the bearing force of recoil is supposed to be taken. Then comes the mold release. Now, this is a very nerve-wracking process because you're taking, in my case, somebody else's really nice rifle and somebody else's really nice stock and putting the two together with a substance in between the company's brag to be stronger than steel after it's set. Now, I don't think that's actually true, but the stuff is really freaking tough to break. So it's a little bit nerve-wracking, and you can calm that a little bit with the mold release. Now, I prefer to use two different releases, one over top of the other, that way to kind of double up on the protection of it. First one I start with is a good coat of wax. Now, same thing with the modeling clay. This stuff comes off a lot easier than the epoxy. So cover everything. Everything you could possibly think of. And you can actually use the wax. Why I like this so much, you can buff it into engravings and lettering, and it'll actually fill in the the pits. So give it a good coat of wax. I usually go 2 coats of wax. Then I use the Brownells special type mold release. Give a good coat of that to everything. And in doing so, you want to also make sure that you coat anything you're getting to put back on, like the trigger guard, action screws. If it has an internal magazine you can't take out, you got to coat that too. It depends on what the rifle has. But make sure you put mold release on everything. And don't be shy. Now we begin the actual assembling, getting ready for bed. I like to put the stock in a vise with padded jaws, in my case leather. Don't use a t-shirt, it doesn't work. I fixed the rifle, the guy tore up with that. And I like to put the action screws in with the trigger guard and everything because there's a lot of stuff going on in a very short amount of time and it saves a little effort if you don't have to try to get the screws lined up. And a little trick I worked out is to take cotton balls, pull them into thin strands and pack them around the screw. Turn the screw some, it'll pull the cotton down in the hole. That's going to do 2 things for you. One, it's going to help hold the screws up so they don't fall out when you go to put the action in. And 2, it creates a little dam to keep the epoxy from going down around the screw. Just make sure you don't leave any little fuzzy bits sticking up. Make sure you get all that off. Then next we actually need to get out the compound. In my case, I'm using what is called Acroglass Gel. It is essentially a two-part epoxy. Parts are mixed equally and they give you about 30 minutes of work time, 24 hours cure time, and it's supposed to be extremely strong. Also comes with dye packs. You can dye it to match the stock as best you can. But be warned, anyone doing this, they go looking for the product, make sure it's gel. There is another product just called Acroglass, but once it's mixed, it's basically the consistency of water and will pour into every crack and crevice, run out of every little nick or scratch. And the one I was doing, it actually ended up flowing into the action. And there's a little bit of a panic and a whole bunch of cotton balls soaked in acetone to get that one cleaned up. So make sure you get the gel, you'll save yourself a lot of trouble. Now before we start mixing, we need to get out everything we're going to need for the mix and pour. We need to put newspaper down, and we need to get out everything we're going to need for cleanup. Because like I said, this is a time constraint process. So we don't want to have to go hunting for something while the epoxy's hardening. So make sure you get all that stuff out, set out on the bench. Put newspaper down if you want to. Then we can start mixing. It is a equal parts mix, so 1 part epoxy, 1 part hardener. And basically it's kind of like the consistency of cake frosting. So just mix the two together to get a uniform color, put the dye in there so you can see it. And then we just carefully start pouring it into the action, or scraping it into the action. And with this, you want to make sure you get plenty in the barrel channel. You can't really have too much, it'll just be more cleanup. It's an art form to try to get it right. But what you want to take and do is get enough in the bottom that when you set the barrel in, it's going to squish it and any air pockets out. That's what you want to see happen, okay? I try to dab it in everywhere, so make sure you poke some down in the recoil lug spot. And try to keep it away from the screws as best you can. You'll save yourself a little bit of grief. Then we lower the action in and start tightening the screws down. Try to hold it in one hand, get the screwdriver underneath, and just kind of twist it and wiggle it around to get the screws actually started before you let it down to the epoxy. Help keep things a little cleaner. And once it's down, you don't want to hum the screws home. You want to just get them just snug. You want it basically to just set nicely where it wants to be. Then comes the cleanup. Just go around with I start with a popsicle stick, go around, scrape off any extra that's come out. Then I come back with cotton balls, and you can either use rubbing alcohol, or I prefer acetone. Just wipe everything down, and then I go to paper towels, wipe everything down, and I go to Q-tips and go around the little seam on all the parts. After you get everything cleaned up real good, give it a good look over. Make sure that nothing has got epoxy on it you need to clean off, because it comes off a lot easier when it's wet. And after that, what I usually take and do is just leave. Don't try to clean up. Everything's going to be a sticky, nasty, goopy mess. So I just leave. I walk over, shut off the lights, walk out, lock the door. That's it. Come back the next morning, everything will be nice and hard. And all the mess you've made the night before will be easy to clean up. Just crumple up the paper and throw it away. Everything will be nice and hard. If you try to do it when it's wet, you'll end up with goop on your hand, and you'll be finding it all over the house for the next 2 hours. Trust me, I know. And after that, what you need to take and do is take the screws back out. They may come hard, so just go gentle. Then you need to break it free of the action for the first time. Now, I usually accomplish this by sitting on the floor with it between my legs and work from the fore end backward. It will come out hard the first time no matter what you do. Then just take off all your extra tape, clean up any areas you need to with a chisel, a little sandpaper, and give everything a good clean and a good oil, and put it back together, and you now have a perfectly bedded rifle. Hope you guys enjoy the video. Thanks for watching.